guys, it is a little bit later than normal, but March is done, April has begun. So how did we finish up things in March? Hey guys, if you are new to my channel, welcome to The Book Path. I'm Nicole, and if this isn't your first video, thanks for sticking around. This is a little bit later. I mean, happy spring break to those of you who have kids on spring break this week. I happen to be one of those moms. Probably by the time this is posted though, spring break will be closer to being complete. I do apologize for this getting out late, but we were thrown. Like, it was all sorts of like themed weeks at school, and then it was the Easter party celebrations, and then we had a party for one of my kids for his birthday. It was coming up, so we had that. The weekend came, Easter came, 2 days later it was one of my kids' birthdays, and then on top of that, my youngest came down with, I don't know if it was literal spring fever. He got a little mini cold, and he's been doing it. So we have been kind of like non-stop since spring break started. I kind of ended the month with just like the last few days, just not even reading anything because it was just so swamped. But obviously the month has come to a close. I know we touched base on what I did read for Final Book Support Group, but I didn't talk about what I was reading for, I believe it was Realmathon and Marvelathon. To be honest, I completely lost track of my points. Like, I know I did a lot more like points to build up and strengthen your realm than points attacking. I think I only attacked once, and it was like for like 30 points, so it wasn't like this big thing. And then in Marvelathon, I think I was averaging maybe like 30 or 40 points a book. I really didn't like do as well as I would like on point scales and reading a whole bunch. But when you see towards the end, we'll get to that. I'm going to go over what I read outside of Final Book Support Group, which should be great because I only read 2 things for Final Book Support Group. But when you see at the end kind of what we ended up with, I'm not mad. I am not mad at. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first book I decided to tackle this month was Chain of Thorns. Yes, the huge chonky version. This is the last book in the Last Hours series, the Last Hours series, and I had read the first 2, and this has been sitting around for about a year. I borrowed it from my mother-in-law, and I needed to get to this. It was hard because I didn't like The Last Hours as well as the Infernal Devices, if I'm being honest, but I still loved like the world that was being created. I just was kind of like meh with some of the characters. I ended up finding out my favorite characters were, I think it was Thomas and Anna. And I liked their kind of stories, and obviously Magnus Bane because he's Magnus Bane. So I did like his little kind of like appearances in the series. I don't want to give too much away because obviously this is the last book in the series. I'll just say it felt long. Like, this book felt long. There was stuff happening, and it was stuff that needed to happen because it meant something in the storyline, but it just felt long. I did like, there was the love triangle with Cordelia and James. Was it James? Yes. And Matthew, I believe. That was kind of coming to a head, which was nice. Everybody was kind of having their own little romances, which I thought was really great because you're kind of seeing all of that happen, and you're not just, you know, drawn to like a few characters. There really is something to love about the whole cast of characters in their own way. Everyone is different. So I really, really liked that aspect of it. It was interesting. Like, it wasn't bad. Like, this whole trilogy definitely isn't bad. It's good. It just felt long. And I'm wondering if a lot of that had to do with the fact that she was trying to cover multiple characters with multiple POVs and multiple storylines in one go, whereas in the Dark Artifices, or I'm sorry, the Infernal Devices, it was really three character stories, and so it felt much more quickly going through the story. I'm not sure. I ended up giving this one 4 stars because it was still good. It was still a really good series. I still loved the world. I loved the myths. I still, as always, love Cassandra Clare's way of bringing quotes from, you know, literature into her books to make her characters very, you know, book friendly. I guess they all love their books within it. So I do find that fun. I do recommend this series. But it wasn't my favorite compared to Infernal Devices. I think I liked Infernal Devices more. But yeah, so 4 stars. This got done for both Realmathon and Marvelathon. Like I said, I don't know. I do know that I used this because the back side of the cover was the full black cover, and it did have a cityscape in the back, so I did get some extra bonus points for Realmathon for that, so I was happy. But yeah, so one done, the last hour's done, so another series or trilogy or whatever is done, and that was like what we've been wanting this year. Okay, so next up, I have a separate video for this, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but I did end up reading Vengeful Gods. This was an arc that I ended up getting. I will post a link down below for the video where I went over this. Super steamy, super taboo, super dark. That was pretty much all you need to know. Very kind of mafia-like in a way, but absolutely like, even within all its darkness, like the characters were just brought to so much realism, and it just really dealt a lot with relationships and being vulnerable and things like that, in a, you know, intimate way. So I do recommend that, but like I do say, check the trigger warnings. Make sure you are ready to dive into the deepest parts of the ocean on that book, because there is a lot of taboo and a lot of triggers for it. So make sure you check the list. I didn't find anything, you know, bad with what I was reading, but then again, I can probably handle a little bit more reading wise than others. So I do, like I said, check trigger warnings, but it was a really great book. I ended up giving it 5 stars. And I do recommend if you are looking for a very dark romance. So next up, once again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on it because I went over it in my final book support group video. And that was A Kingdom of Gods and Ruin by Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti. This is kind of the prequel to her Game of Malice and Greed series that is newer. Gave it 4 stars. Like I said, won't go into it too much. I will link down below for final book support group for a little bit more of a look into this one. But like I said, 4 stars. Can't wait to get to the series. Obviously, I am loving their writing, so we will see how it goes. Next up was the only other book that I read for final book support group. So once again, we'll not go into a lot of details. If you want that, check down below. And that is the final book in the Twisted series, Twisted Lies by Anna Huang. This one I ended up giving, I think it was 3 stars. Definitely my least favorite amongst the whole entire series. Very tame in terms of the spice. And I just expected a little bit more of the storyline, if I'm being honest. I felt like with the subject matter they were trying to cover as kind of the plot, I felt like she could have done a little bit more with it. So it was just a little underwhelming for that. But if you want more information, check out the final book support group wrap-up video that I'll link below. But this one also got finished, so yay. So obviously for March, my goal was to try to get through as much Cassandra Clare books as possible. And obviously from what you're seeing, that didn't really happen. However, I did get started. I mean, we finished The Last Hours, and I did end up reading City of Bones, which is the first book in the Mortal Instruments series. This is the one that the TV show is based on. This is what started my, you know, descent into madness into Shadowhunter world. However, this is the first time that I've actually picked up the Mortal Instruments series to get started on that. And I will be honest, had I started with this first, I might not have gotten into the rest of the other series like the Infernal Devices, because I ended up giving this 3 stars. Like, it was what it was, but I wasn't loving it. I'll be honest. I really didn't care for Clary, who's the main character. I really didn't care for Jace or any of the other characters. I found them all to be extremely kind of annoying. The world was just not as fleshed out as it was in like the Dark Artifice in the dark, yeah. It wasn't as fleshed out as it was in the other series that I've read. So I'm kind of happy that I decided to read it in chronological order, because the worlds in the other series are so much more richer, and I really loved the characters. Now, I do think that she wrote the Moral Instruments first, and if that's the case, then I believe kind of like, okay, well, compared to where she's at now with her writing styles, then I can understand this being like more of her earlier works, because it just didn't feel as detailed. It didn't feel as emotionally grabbing as the other series. So like I said, 3 stars. I'm going to continue with the series because it's the Shadowhunter world. I liked the world, and I want to see where they're going to go with the series. So, and obviously I own the whole series, so it would kind of be a waste to not read it when it's not bad, and maybe this is just the intro book, so that wasn't the greatest and it picks up, you know. But like I said, 3 stars. We'll be continuing, trying to find time to read this, but yeah, not up to par with the rest of the other Shadowhunter World series and books, but did it, got the points, you know, darker cover. I did get like, there is a cityscape on the spine, so I stretched prompts to get some more points for this one, but obviously we had some page count bonus points as well for some of these books, so yay. So next up, we went for our next pick in the Cocky Hero Club. I didn't know, I think I filmed my April TBR prior to reading it, so I think in the April one it says I might read it in that one, but nope, got it done. And that was Stuck Up Suit, once again by Penelope Ward and V. Keelan, and it didn't disappoint. It didn't disappoint. I loved this book. I like drowned in this book in one day, because like it was the tension was so well done. You wanted, like, I got to a point where I was literally so emotionally invested. I was like feeling sick to my stomach at some of the points because I needed to know what happened. Like, just the emotional trauma and damage going on in this book was physically affecting me, and I knew that. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to sleep until I know exactly what, you know, happens. So yeah, I read this entire book in one sitting. It's hard for me to say if I like this book the best so far, because I really, really loved Chance in the Cocky Bastard book. But these two, and honestly, it's been, I can't even remember the names now, but the 2 main characters in this were like amazing. The banter that they went after each other with was great. The emotional like devastation that they were kind of going through was like whatever, but you do have the he falls like hard first part of this, and basically you have the main character where she is like a curvy kind of tattooed badass basically, and she's on the train in New York, and she sees this like gorgeously suited guy, and he's acting like an ass on the phone, and she sees him drop his phone, so she picks up the phone and she's gonna return it to him. So she's trying to scroll through and find out like clues on where to go. So I don't know for the life of me, like if this was supposed to be before people had like locked screens or anything, because she was able to get into it. So I found that really interesting. But whatever. But she like, you know, she kind of, you know, does a little espionage and surfs his phone to find out a little bit more about him. And she ends up calling like one of the people on his phone, who happens to be like this woman who like hates him with a passion. So she's like, just take the phone and throw it in the ocean. You know, that's what you could do to return it. And she's just like, oh my gosh. So when she goes to try to return the phone, she goes up to his office and she's knocking on the door, and he won't even see her. Like, he's just got that much attitude, and he's just like, and so she finally gets so mad at him for not wanting to like meet her face to face so she could give him his phone back, that she yells at him through the door, and she's just like, fine. And she takes his phone and she just like takes a picture of her chest, takes a picture of like her legs, her side, like her foot, like different body parts on his phone, for whatever reason. And then she gives the phone to like his assistant and was like, there you go, and like walks off. And so he ends up finding her, or whatever. She writes her, I think she writes her name and number, something down. But he ends up getting the phone and seeing the pictures, and obviously he's like, right away. And so that kind of like comes into a game of like, I don't want to say cat and mouse, but like they're trying to figure out who each other is or what they look like. She already knows what he looks like, and you know, so he's trying to figure out who she is. And so it's a lot of fun, like playful fun for that. And then there are some more serious undertones to it. Check some of the trigger warnings, because there are mentions of I think there are some health disorders and diseases and things that are lethal, and just kind of dealing with some of that, and parenting and things like, just like a bunch of different other little things, but nothing too out there, but it does reference certain, like I think it's cancer. So just be prepared if that is something that is on your kind of checklist that you would rather not be reading about, then I would skip this book. But I really, really, really highly recommend it. It is like its predecessors. It is another 5-star read for the Cocky Hero Club. So far, it has not disappointed at all. We are 3 for 3 with 5 stars being for each of these books. I love the relationships. I love the banter. I love the stories. I wasn't sure if I was going to love this one, because the fact that she was supposed to be like kind of stalking him on his phone from like the little blurb about it was like off-putting to me a little bit, because I was like, that's kind of but the way she does it, it's really not that way, and it's just kind of funny and adds to the hilarity of the storyline. So I totally recommend it. It was so good. Yeah, so 5 stars, and we will be on to our next Cocky Hero Club pick in April, which, oh gosh, I think it's the pilot, something pilot. Either way, we'll get to it. So after all of that, my last read, sadly, was Valley of Shadows by Arthur Butt. This was one of the author recommendations from our Challenge Accepted jar. I tried to keep picking this book back up and reading it. I made it, I think, 70 to 90 pages in, and this is like a 200 and something page book. It's very short, and I ended up DNFing. I am so sorry to the author. It was not bad. Let me go ahead and start with that. Like, it wasn't awful. It just, for me, it felt, for whatever reason, it felt more sci-fi than fantasy. And I don't know if it was a mixture of both, but it was coming off very sci-fi to me. And I'm not a big sci-fi reader. Even though I think this is supposed to take place in like some sort of time traveled, like medieval world, for whatever reason, while reading this book, my head was thinking like John Carter. The movie. Haven't read the books for John Carter, but the movie. And I loved John Carter, the movie. I really, really did. But for whatever reason, I'm getting this kind of desert world in my head as I'm reading it. And then I was just kind of thrown off, because then there would be mentions of armor and horses and tourneys and like tournaments and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's supposed to be like a medieval type, whatever. And I just wasn't getting that. And then the characters weren't, like, they were kind of like blipped at. There wasn't a lot to really understand with the characters. Maybe that was because it's a shorter novel, but because of that, I just didn't feel drawn to the characters, and I didn't feel drawn to like their quest to basically go and save this girl who is like, there's 2 guys, and it's one of their sister and the other one is his fiance, and I just didn't feel the connection as much as I wanted to, as like the trauma that they're going through and the need to rescue this woman. And I thought that was really interesting, considering like for one of them, this is like supposed to be his fiance, his lady love, and there was no real like he does like one flashback to her, but there's not really romancy vibes. Like, it almost makes it feel like, dare I say it, she was like given to him based on something he did. I don't know. Like, that's the other problem that I had with the book, is that it felt like you were dropped off in the middle of a series, where I kept looking and it didn't tell me that this was part of a series. It like, everything shows that this book is like a standalone, but it reads very much like you just got dropped into the middle of a series, and battles and wars have happened and you don't know why they're happening, and like, you don't like, I think from the blurb, it said he was supposed to be time traveling, but they never really mention him coming from a different world or a different time or anything like that. In the parts that I read, like maybe for whatever reason, it was in like the last 100 pages and I just didn't get that far, but I just felt lost in it. And like I said, it wasn't bad. There were parts that I could see like, okay, this would be really interesting. But I felt like this was one of those books where I wish, like, I would love the author to like pull it back and then like revamp it. Like, make it longer, make it a 400-page book, make it a 500-page book, make it a series. I don't care, because I felt that there was a world worth exploring in it. It just wasn't done. And I felt like had the author given these characters some more backstory that led you in to the things that led you, like maybe the moment that they find out that the girl, it has been taken. I'm like, the emotional aspects of it just kind of weren't there. And I'm like, I needed that, as well as not being thrown in, to kind of pull me along to root for these guys. Because I wanted to root for them. I just didn't feel anything to root for, if that makes sense. So it was just one of those ones where it gave that feeling of you were just lost and you felt like things weren't finished. So I'm like, should this author ever do that, where they I don't want to say repurpose, but they kind of redo the story and make it something more, I would be willing to like pick it back up and see what changes are made and what's added. Like, I would be curious for that. So like I said, I did DNF it, but it wasn't bad. It just felt not finished, if that was the best way of saying it. So it is what it is. And then, like I said, after that, I really didn't read that much. But so I only read, like, I think it was 7 books, one of them being a novella, one of them being like a DNF, which honestly made me feel like a little underwhelmed, where I was like, God, I didn't read as much as I thought I would, until I got to some of the stats, right? So once I got to the stats, I was like, okay, because in February I ended up reading 9 books. So 7 to 9, you're like, okay, well, I'm 2 books shorter. However, the page count for the months was what made me a little bit more happier, because in February, for even reading those 9 books, I ended up reading like just shy of 2,800 pages. I was at like 2,799 pages. But for the month of March, I ended up, like, drumroll please, one of those things. I ended up reading 2,974 pages. So I actually read more, but in less books. So I was kind of like, once I looked at it that way, I was a little bit more happier with the results. And just to give you like a little bit of if you're a visual learner, instead of hearing the pages, you want to kind of see it, I ended up looking in my bookshelves to find some books that matched like the page count for like the ebooks that I was reading. And bear with me. And so basically, when I put them all together, right, like with pulling the books off my shelf that kind of equaled the pages of the ebooks I read, I came up with this. Like, I'm not mad at this. Like, this is like some chunky stuff. And so like when I saw this, I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm now happy with my reading month. So yeah, so that was basically everything I read for the month of March. Like I said, I'm not sure what the outcome was for who won in Realmathon and who won in Marvelathon. I will have to find that out and get back to you guys in a future video with that information. But obviously April is off to a start. We are trying to do our best to accomplish things for Magical Readathon and get our characters the next level of courses that they need, as always. And it's with its own little measurements of fun. So stay tuned for videos on that. Once again, if you are curious for my thoughts on Vengeful Gods, as well as what I read for Final Book Support Group Round 11, go ahead and check out those videos down below. I'll leave the links there. Were there any of these books that you read that you liked? Were there books you read that you didn't like? How did March go for you reading wise? What was your favorite book you read for the month? Leave it in the comments below. If there are other books that you are wanting me to get to, something you've come across that were like, I think she might like this, go ahead and leave those in the comments below. You know I am always looking forward to adding more books to my seemingly never-ending TBR. But with that being said, I hope you guys are doing well. If it is spring break and you have your kids out, do not worry, school starts again. No, I'm here. I love my kids. But anyways, take care, have fun. Warm weather is here, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye.